long time no see. If there's any noise in the background, you'll have to excuse it. There is somebody in the house rooting through a toolbox, and every now and then I'm getting a clanging and banging noise coming up here. Anyway, so someone has, within the last 8 days, discovered KDP, and within that time period has uploaded 43 books. Now, this person has also noticed that this KDP endeavour could be explosively rewarding. Oh, and has also researched the gurus and has come to the conclusion that the home boss is the most honest and transparent.
I just want you to know that I will throw you down the stairs.
You know what though? To be honest, it is all bollocks. The whole fecking lot of it. Everybody and their dog and their cat are hustling, and they're jumping onto the next rolling bandwagon and talking as if they personally have discovered the secrets of the universe. Now, you only have to sell 2 or 3 books in order to qualify as someone who has something of actual value to say to the world. And it isn't KDP that is saturated. Although the water is certainly above the plimsoll line right now with the weight it is currently carrying, it's YouTube that's saturated. See, if people are now, after all this time, are still now only discovering that it's possible to upload any collection of pages which could loosely be described as a book onto Amazon, then when does the ball stop rolling? Or at least when does it start slowing down? Soon, that's all that's going to be left to watch on YouTube is the KDP experts who have probably got about a week's experience under their belt. That's it. That's all there's going to be left to watch. Anyway, as I said before, it is all just bollocks. To quote Mrs. Doyle from Father Ted, big hairy bollocks. Now look, I haven't made a video for a couple of weeks because I haven't had the heart, the will, or the inspiration to do so. There have been some very strange and unpleasant happenings intruding into my life, 2 of which completely took the wind out of my sails. And they left me asking, look, what the hell is going on in the world right now? So I'll be honest, I haven't been particularly interested in anything connected to KDP or YouTube. My mind has been elsewhere. It all just came to seem ridiculous and unimportant. But you know, things have been popping up on my news feed and through notifications, and I have noticed this sudden big interest, for example, in maths books. Now, that doesn't interest me at all because I'm not a mathematician and I'm not a teacher. And I wouldn't even begin to attempt to put a maths book together, even if there is some amazing software suddenly coming out on the market. It's not my thing. It might be your thing. It's not my thing. But there's a reasonable part of me that objects to people who probably couldn't run through the 3 times table unless it was written down in front of them, you know, actually flogging the idea of making a killing through maths books and other educational books. You know, I'll admit it, I am jaded. I am really jaded. The biggest recent highlight for me, however, was the latest Sleepy Pilgrim video, which, if you are genuinely interested in writing and publishing children's books, you should watch it. Let me just have a sip of my tea, or it'd be a gulp, really. Nothing beats a brew, does it? No, you should watch it. Look, and I don't mean books with about 10 words on each page, although it is true that a well-illustrated picture book can be a real joy and pleasure. I'm talking about the imaginative, creative process. Now, Sleepy Pilgrim's passion was very, very clear to see in that video, as was the fact that he does know what he's talking about. And you might not have seen that side of him before. You might not. A lot of people haven't. But he put all of the KDP gurus firmly in the shade with that video. I will put the link below, so do make sure you check it out because it is really well worth watching. He also admitted, which I loved because I did the same thing when I was a kid. I loved the Enid Blyton's famous 5 books. I ate them up as a kid. I've always been a reader. I remember lying in bed terrified after reading one of the books which included a haunted train. You know, it literally terrified me. But as he said, you know, you can't write those stories nowadays. You know, they were of the time, but still amazing books. Having said that, my youngest daughter, who's 29, she grew up absolutely loving them. And she said she found a comfort in the old-fashioned nature of them, you know. So that I like to hear that. Anyway, whilst we're at this point, it would be fine and dandy if you do like this video and you subscribe to the channel. If you don't want to, then don't. But it would be nice if you did. Anyway, as they say, meanwhile, back at the ranch. So you can tell I'm reading from a script, because if I don't, I just go off all over the place and I say about a million times. So let's be honest here, and I have probably said this before. KDP, low content book publishing, is a completely separate entity from the publishing of higher content books, be they fiction or non-fiction. The mindset that produces only or largely the former is a world away from the mindset that produces the latter. Now, I don't know why I have wasted so much time and energy becoming irritated over something that is basically just not worth it to me. I've been pretty mad over some stuff, you know, connected to the KDP gurus. But this last 2-3 weeks, you know what? Whew, they got me rethinking. They got me to regroup, and I had to step right back from everything. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there isn't still stuff out there on YouTube connected to the KDP gurus that doesn't bug the hell out of me. But you know what? A lot of it just does not matter anymore. It really doesn't matter. You know, I have finally faced the fact that it's a wheel that is just going to keep on turning. Now, eventually it will run out of steam, but that's probably not going to be for a long while. Now, again, you see, I wouldn't really have even known about most of this stuff, the KDP gurus and the get rich quick and the notebooks, etc., etc., etc. I wouldn't have known if I hadn't have decided at the beginning of this year to fall into the trap of exploring the easy way of publishing and making money. That's what I did. I willingly fell into that trap in order to get me back into the creative flow, because I'd gotten out of it. Anyway, I'm not sorry in some ways, but I am sorry in others. And I can tell you, I never did produce a no or low content book. And the ones that I have come up with have taken a huge amount of time and effort. You know what? I could have written one of those high content books that I have been promising myself for months and months that I will. And the amount of time it took me to put those other books together, the amount of effort and blood, sweat and tears, I could have written at least one, probably 2 high content books. So why didn't I? That's a good question, isn't it? Why didn't I? Is it anybody else's fault? No, it's only mine. You see, it was fear. So even though I do have books that are selling on Amazon, and I have written short stories, and I've written many, many blog posts, so, you know, I've written a lot of stuff, I lost my mojo. And then I began to believe that I couldn't do it. I would feel the anxiety choking me up at the thought of starting to write a book. I could almost feel the rejection coming. I could feel the resistance within me. And so the easy way in, or the easy way out, dependent upon how you look at it, it seemed to offer a solution. Now, I actually did write quite a lot of stuff for the not low content books that I did produce as a result of getting caught up in this whirlwind, this KDP whirlwind. And they were mostly poems. I wrote, you know, a lot of poems. I don't know, I say poems rather than poetry. I always think poetry is very grand, isn't it? But poems are these nice rhyming things that I do. So would I call myself a poet? I don't know, I don't think so. I'd probably call myself a poem writer. But I wrote a lot, and you know what? It did scratch that creative itch a little. It did. But I still had that feeling that I was selling myself short. And here's another cold hard fact. that I had to face. Although my books may be consistently selling, I'm not about to retire on the earnings. And so the promise of making more money for less effort, which certainly hasn't worked out for me, I can tell you, just seemed horribly enticing for a while. Shame on me. Yeah, big shame on me. So for me, I think the answer has to be a combination of more high content books, and they take commitment. You've got to be in it to win it. You've got to, do your day job, see to your family, do all those things you do, and you've still got to sit down and write. It's so much easier to faff around on Canva. I'll be honest, it's easier to faff on Canva. It depends what you're doing, because I have recently re-edited, unpublished, re-edited and republished the children's book that I've made videos on it that I had a go at making. And because somebody had left a couple of suggestions on the YouTube channel, and they were good suggestions, and I thought, well, okay, actually I'll think about that. And also I renamed the book, and there was a good reason I renamed it, but I will not go into that story today. And so it's still the same book. It's got more images in it, and it's got more pages, so it's a little bit less text heavy, but there's a lot of images in it, and it just getting them right and getting them in the right position and the right size, it took a lot. But even that is easier, because it's almost like you're playing. It's hard work, but it's like you're playing. It's easier than sitting down and committing to writing that story and the plot. And once we get into it, I know from experience that once I get into a story, once I get into writing it, it will flow. But a friend of mine many years ago said to me that it was a bit like sex. She was okay when she got going, but it was the getting started that was the problem, So it's the same kind of thing. Anyway, so for me, the answer has to be a combination of more high content books, because that's what I keep telling myself I want to do, and I do. And I need to put my money where my mouth is and get over the fear that developed. And also with a combination, shall we say, lower content books. Well, when I say lower content books, I've got, there are some books that I'd really like to put together because I like the idea of them. They appeal to me. And they still require imagination and creativity. But first I have to face my own demons and not be distracted by crap that has nothing to do with me. And I have been at least partially doing that. So here's the question. Are you someone who genuinely wants to write? Are you someone whose imagination won't leave them alone and who has characters and storylines bouncing around in their head? Even if you ignore them, even if you try and shut them up because you think, hey, stop this, I'm going to have to sit down and do something about it if you don't go away. But are you one of those people? Are you someone who has stories to tell? Or even someone who loves to communicate and has genuine knowledge and skills that can be shared in a non-fiction book? Are you someone who is willing to commit your time and energy to that endeavour, mostly just because you want to? Are you that kind of person? Or do you just want to produce something that makes money, with money being the biggest motivating factor? If that's true, that's true. Nothing wrong with it. Know your agenda. Be upfront about your agenda. Now, there is a relevance in what I'm going to say to you now. Is my self-publishing journey began with me watching YouTube videos made by authors, and I found the process completely intimidating. There was as much bullshit talked in that world as there is in the KDP guru world. For example, you can't publish a book without having a professional editor. You can't publish a book unless you have a whole team of beta readers, a big social media following, and the services of a professional illustrator. In other words, you've got to have a shit pile of cash to even get going. Now, that is largely rubbish. I know that now, but I felt really intimidated and inadequate at first. you do need to have, if you've got no money, right, you want to write a book and you've got no money, right, write the book and then get as many people as you know and trust, people who read, and get them to read through your book. People that, friends, people who will read, and ask them to highlight things that they feel you need to change, highlight grammatical errors and spelling errors and missed words, etc., etc. And then get the best cover that you can possibly afford. And that you will have to do a bit of marketing if you want to start selling the books. But all of that comes with the territory. Now, the point to all of that is, though, that the message that was given by a lot of those people that I watched was to write about what you're passionate about, write what you like, write what you enjoy, because otherwise it's going to show in the book. And I know this is true because I've written books in the past because I thought, well, it's a good idea. I do know something about this, so it's a good idea. And I've struggled with it, and I've hated the process. And that is because basically, even though I knew a lot about it, I was constantly aware with a non-fiction book that actually a lot of people weren't going to take it very well because, people like to be fluffed up and pampered and buttered up a little bit in this day and age. And these were books about relationships and dating. And it never worked out well, and it was a miserable experience. Now, writing blog posts is one thing, but putting it all together in a book, and I thought I will never ever write one of those books again. I know a lot of stuff that, throughout the 28 years I've been involved in my day job, I've learned an awful lot, but it's not really the way in which I would deliver it. It's not really well accepted because, as I say, if you do research on that subject, a lot of women want to be told they're goddesses and that it's all his fault and that Mr. Right will show up tomorrow and they can get their ex back like that and they can make any man want them. Those books people love. I ain't going to write those books. I'm not going to write that crap. So, and no disrespect to anybody who does, but, there is a lot of, there's a lot of flattery going on in there, and it's not my thing. So, just because we know something does not mean that we can write about it. But I've written books where, the characters are alive in my head and I'm so invested in them, I can't stop thinking about them. And those books have flowed. They've absolutely flowed. So the point of all of me rambling on with this is that in the KDP guru world, often you are being told, it's being turned on its head, and you are being told, don't write about what you're passionate about. That's not going to take you anywhere. That's a waste of time. What you need to do is work out what people are buying and write a book, put together a book under that category, in that niche. Now, that is good advice if your main motivation is making money, regardless of the product. It doesn't matter what the product is. If it's going to make money, then that's it. Now, that's fine. If that's what a person's agenda is, then that's their agenda. No judgment. But that advice is not so good for those who actually want to write. Because they want to write because they're compelled to do so, regardless of whether they end up, nobody buying the book and, worst case scenario, nobody buying the book and then getting a load of negative reviews or ratings nowadays, because most people can't be bothered to leave a review. So I would love to make a ton of money from my books. Of course I would. I'm a human being, and believe you me, I could find plenty of places for that money to go. But you know what? I'd be really, really sad. I'd actually be kind of heartbroken if I had to concede that no matter how much effort I put into a book, no matter how hard I tried, no matter how much passion I put into it, or how much I enjoyed it myself, because I've written the stuff that I have loved and nobody else has had much of an interest in it. And I've written stuff that I've loved and people have had an interest in it. You can never be sure. But, I would be brokenhearted, but you know why I'd be brokenhearted? It's a bit like when I was learning to ride my motorbike. I had to do the compulsory basic training 3 times because I could not get a balance between the clutch and the accelerator. I never had a bike as a kid. I've got awful balance, even though I do kickboxing. I still have dreadful balance. And so I just couldn't. I spent most of my time flying through the air as if I was on, a flying machine, and then hitting the ground and bouncing. And I soon discovered why it was so important to wear a helmet, I can tell you. So I was devastated then because I thought the thing I wanted to do the most, I would never be able to do it. And that's what hurt. And eventually I did do it. I did do it. So, in the end, I said to anybody trying to help me, look, I tell you what, just leave me alone. Let me get out there on that car park. And I just rode round and round in circles until I had it sussed. I taught myself. That was the only way. But dear God, I learned how to hit the ground before that bike fell so quickly because I didn't want to keep damaging my little bike. Anyway, so it's a similar thing that if I'd written books and nobody wanted to read them, I'd be really upset because I really love writing, and then it would be a sign that actually you're a rotten writer, or you don't have anything of any interest to say. And I think it's not so much the money, it's the fact that you think, well, actually I'm not able to do that, and it's something I want to do so much. So, but I'd also be equally sad if I produced low content books. Well, not that I ever will, but lower than high content books with plenty of content, and they sold better than my high content books. On one hand, I think I'd be a bit disappointed. I'd think, but on the other hand, if I got into that position, it would also support me whilst I was writing more high content books. You see, my creative ego would be hurt, but the cash would be very handy. So now what we're really saying, though, is let's not confuse the two. Let's not pretend that the production of notebooks and basic line journals or activity books made from downloaded templates is in the same arena as the writing of high content books or other books that have a lot of content. There is a place for both on Amazon, but they're not the same. And they shouldn't be getting jumbled up. They shouldn't be getting jumbled up in our mind. It's like, thinking about somebody who's written a recipe book on really, fancy recipes and really highfalutin stuff. And then somebody who's written Quick Cheap Suppers book. Quick Cheap Suppers book is fantastic. We all would like a nice recipe for something we can throw together in 10, 15 minutes while we get in from work. But on the other hand, I don't know. Will that take, I don't know. Maybe that's a rotten analogy. Maybe that's not a very good example. Anyway, now, so I was going to say there's one last thing, but actually there's three. So firstly, creating a book and selling 2 or 3 copies is one thing. Yeah. Be proud that someone has purchased something that you have made. However, it doesn't qualify you to start making YouTube videos about self-publishing. Why would people flock to watch videos of those who have sold only a handful of books, congratulating them and telling them how inspirational they are? It really doesn't make any sense to me, unless, of course, those people themselves are aiming very low. I can almost feel the rotten tomatoes coming my way and the criticisms and the how dare yous coming my way. You know what? I don't care. I don't care at the moment. The world is a strange place. Yes, and people can be angry at the drop of a hat, and yeah, it's a strange place. Which, anyway, the second point is desperation. Now, before typing up this script, and I know there are people out there who, do you know, I envy them. They just talk into the camera. They never say They keep on track and they never run out of anything to say. Now, they don't appear to be reading from a script unless, they're very clever. I mean, I've got my laptop up as high as I can get it near to the camera. But I'm sure, there's another way of doing it that I don't know about. But before typing it up, I actually went and had a look at what has been going on recently with KDP on YouTube, because as I've already said, I've been into a little bolt hole for a while. And it's clear that nothing much has changed, but there are more and more of these coming out of the woodwork. However, what I was interested in, more than people's videos, is the comments underneath them. That's really where you need to be looking at times if you want to know what is really going on or how it's working for people. So there was a common theme I noticed. So, for example, people who, having published a lot of no and low content books and having made no sales, and then begging to know what they're doing wrong.
Help me!
Now, one commenter who said they were in their 50s and with health problems, unable to work, they'd come across this KDP stuff and they thought, well, okay, this could be the answer. It gives me something to do, but it also brings me in money because I can't work. And they said they'd uploaded 100, and now I don't know if they were low or no content books. I don't know, but 100 books, and they haven't received a single sale. And obviously that's really disappointing for that person. Or there were clearly a lot of people who are not understanding the process of self-publishing and have run into difficulties that they can't solve. They don't know how to do it. And there was one young woman asking, is it true? She'd heard that it's true that the more books you upload, the more likely you are to make some sales. Is that true? She was asking. You know what? It's a really grubby swamp to be scrabbling around in, with apparently only a very small number of people having actually figured out how to make real money with these products on Amazon. For most, it is likely to be a soulless and unrewarding experience. So look, if it is money you are after, and that's fine. We could all do with more money, especially in this day and age. I've had to look at my own price list in my day job, and I've had to amend the prices because, you know, people don't have the money to spend. Now, some will say, oh, that's a low abundance mindset. I don't think it is. My business went really, really quiet for a few weeks. So it's been a strange time all around. I also received an incredibly nasty email of somebody that I'd worked with in 2019. She came to me, I produced the goods in 2019. She was very happy at the time, hadn't heard it, didn't even forgot she existed, had no memory of her. And then I woke up one morning to this incredibly nasty email wishing all sorts of karma on me, bad karma, and hoping that I was going to enjoy the bad karma that was coming my way. I have no idea what that was about. I have no idea. That was a start of a run. So who knows, maybe sending bad karma somebody's way really does work. I don't know, but I didn't respond to it. I thought, I'm not getting involved in this, whatever's going on in your life. If you want to speak to me, if you want to come to me, if you want to talk, you do it, but don't send me that shit. Yeah, sorry for all my bad language today. Anyway, so if it's money you're after and you need, look, there's going to be better and quicker ways of earning it than trying to publish books, low content, no content books on Amazon. You might be one who comes up with the recipe and you figure it out. You might have a few sales here and there, but the effort, the work, and also, even if you have a few sales, you're going to wait 2 months for Amazon to pay you. So if it's money you really need, if you want to keep on with KDP as a hobby, fine. But if it's money you really need, you know what? There's got to be better ways than this. And there's finally, I'm going to say this. I am sick to the back teeth of young, yattering, fast-talking, scatty individuals who have the audacity to teach something that they have only just become involved. They've only just heard of it. They've only just become involved with and have nothing concrete or proven to back themselves up with. Oh, you're not. Reel your necks in. Learn your trade. Put the time in. Earn your stripes. Stop jumping on every feckin' bandwagon that rolls your way, promising easy money for little effort. It doesn't really matter. Again, I'll say it's all bollocks because, look, when people are approaching it in this way, when people are scrabbling around at the bottom, when people keep going for easy, then they're never going to be successful. I'm sorry, but they're not. I've been on this planet quite a few years. Now, look, see, here's the thing. I had an idea at one time before I really started adding many YouTube videos that YouTube and social media was for the young, not for old farts like me. Who the hell wants to listen to somebody like me when they've got some young, bright, gorgeous thing with a big cleavage and a bubbly personality? Because that's what sells nowadays, isn't it? And so I thought, there's not much point in putting anything out there, your old hat. But here I am putting stuff out there without a magnificent cleavage or a great personality. And a few people are listening and etc, etc. But you know what? You're like annoying little bugs. Just won't quit. unless you get squished or you get eaten by a bigger bug. So you know what? If you want to have, right, and a lot of people come to me in my line of work, my day job, and they ask me about success. If I do this, will I be successful? If I do that, will I be successful? The thing with success is we have to define our own version of success. And I think that life is probably made up of a whole series of successes, little successes, bigger, all rolled into one. And in the mishmash with that, there is a lot of failures as well. So there isn't just one successful thing. You know, lots of people have made it big only to lose everything. Now, I'm not saying, oh, if you make it big, you'll lose everything. Of course not. But, you know, if you want to be successful, keep one eye on the current time and keep one eye on the future. And stop looking for easy. Stop looking for easy. And, you know, that just brings me to, just to close up here with something my youngest daughter said to me this morning that she found interesting. She'd seen this research where people, their IQ was tested. They had a bunch of people and their IQ was tested. And then I don't know what they did, but they had to answer questions and do some tasks. I don't know. Anyway, the bottom line is that it emerges that the less intelligent people overestimate their capacity and their ability. More intelligent people tend to underestimate their capacity and their ability. And I thought that makes perfect sense, because we were talking about how many opinions are out there. It's like, ugh, and people just trotting stuff out without question, without challenge, without consideration, without checking it out. So yeah, so it's true, isn't it? Because a lot of people are pretty good at what they do, or who are, they're doing well. They will tend to be quite humble. Whereas you do know there's a lot of bragging goes on out there on the internet, a huge amount of bragging. So just remember that. Lesser intelligent people tend to overestimate their capacity or their ability. More intelligent people tend to underestimate theirs. Now, I know that's not true of absolutely everybody, but it kind of works, if you look at the world. So, anyway, to quote Sleepy Pilgrim, peace out.